Hi, everyone, and welcome to week 9 of the college football season. This entire year, we've all been so lucky to see so many ranked matchups, and this week has just as many as any other week. What does that mean? That means that we can use the rankings right now algorithm to try and understand where the potential rankings might be at the end of week 9 going into week 10. Another thing that's interesting about this week is this is the last week that the AP poll is going to be semi-relevant to a lot of people, right? Starting in week 11, so after the week 10 games, starting in week 11, we're going to see the College Football Selection Committee rankings, and that group of people determine who are going to be in the college football playoff this year. So starting in next week, we'll go ahead and switch algorithms to the College Football Selection Committee, and we'll see what that prediction is. But as of right now, we're going to stay in the AP. So let's go ahead and dive on in to rankingsrightnow.com and see where we're at in terms of the predicted rankings. So here we are. Here are your projected top 25 AP poll ranked teams starting for week 10. So we're in week 9. We're predicting out all of the games that are happening in week 9 to see where the rankings will be in week 10. So here are your top 25. Right off the bat, the biggest thing that is obvious is there's not a lot of movement up top except for one, which is Texas A&M at number 8. Why is that relevant? Well, that is because they are projected to beat number 8 LSU. So there's the algorithm is saying A&M up to LSU's spot at number 8, and that is due to a 28-26 win. How do we come up with 28-26? We are taking all of the results of Vegas money line to try and find what is the what are the predicted outcomes. I said money line, I meant spread. So we have 28-26 right here as the projected result, and with that result, you have Texas A&M jumping up to number 8. And you have LSU dropping down to 19. LSU would then have 2 losses on the year. Kind of hard to make an argument with some of these teams that have 0 or 1 losses that they should be below LSU. So an Ole Miss, a Kansas State, Boise State, all having really good high-quality losses on the year. LSU would have 2 high-quality losses, one against USC at the very beginning of the year, and then this one to Texas A&M. We'll go ahead and see what the flip side of that looks like using the what-if simulation tool here in a second, but as of right now, that's one of the bigger ones that's jumping out on the board. Another one that's jumping out on the board is 22 BYU. That means they are dropping 11 spots. How could that be? Who are they playing? So if we go ahead and go back to the game, BYU is playing UCF this week. UCF started out as the underdog and now is the projected favorite from this team. Do people know something that I don't? I don't know. UCF has struggled a little bit this week, or this year, I should say. BYU is having a really good season. I don't know why UCF is projected to be the winning team. Maybe it's due to the distance that's traveled, something else. I don't know. So with that outcome, BYU is projected to drop 11 spots to 22. This one's a loaded case, right? UCF is nowhere close to the top 25. If BYU loses to a unranked team that they should beat, even though it's on the road, that's definitely going to hurt them in the polls. I don't know if that's going to drop them all the way down to 22. That seems like more of a 16 to 21 maybe type of range, but that's what the algorithm is saying. The algorithm is trained on previous historical AP voting data. So that's another big one. Another one that's really interesting is Alabama making a significant jump back up close to the top 10. If we look at the Alabama game, they're playing against Mizzou, and they're projected to win big. So you have Alabama 34, Mizzou 18. This is really interesting. If we go ahead and look at who are some of the teams that they'd be jumping, Indiana is one of them. Indiana is projected to win 30-24 against UW. UW is unranked. Indiana is only projected to win by 6. If we go ahead and go back over to this game, Alabama is playing ranked number 21 Mizzou, who've spent a lot of time in the top 10 this year, and they're projected to win by 16. So with those two predicted outputs is where we get the situation where Alabama jumps over Indiana, right? One of the other things that is really interesting is even Texas beating a ranked Vanderbilt team, they're ranked number 25 now, they still do not move up in the polls. The algorithm still has Oregon, Georgia, Penn State, and Ohio State all hanging in there right now and staying still, even if Texas has a convincing win over Vanderbilt. I say convincing because right now they're projected to win by 18. So, with all of that being said, let's play around with some potential scenarios. So we're going to go ahead and go on into the what if simulation tool. The what if simulation tool allows you to edit any of the scores that you actually want, and you get to select the algorithm that you want to use. So as of right now, we're interested still in the AP Top 25. We'll go ahead and click on get the season data for that. Now, all we have right here is the same exact output that we were just looking at. So let's go ahead and go to week 9. And from there, let's go ahead and play around with some of these scores. So, for example, let's go ahead and play around with this BYU and UCF score. So, here we are with BYU losing to UCF. Let's say BYU has a really good game and they beat an unranked team the way that they should beat an unranked team. So, we have, let's call this 30 to 17. Go ahead and confirm that. We're going to run the simulation. Just as a reminder, it tells you the altered games that are in your simulation. And in this scenario, BYU still hangs in there at 11. Once again, not really reason to move up if you beat a team that you should beat. The only team, for whatever reason, the betting is against them. But as of right now, the algorithm says if you beat an unranked team and you're in that spot, you should win. So there's no real movement that should be happening up top right here. So Alabama still jumps up a couple slots. Indiana stays still. Notre Dame drops down a little bit, but nothing else too much to talk about here. Another one that we wanted to discuss was what would happen. We're going to go ahead and reset that score. Is what would happen if this score flipped? Let's say it's still a close one, 28 to 26 for Texas A&M and LSU. We'll go ahead and go back up. That's our new altered game. Let's run the simulation and see what happens. So with that output, LSU actually moves up a slot against Tennessee. Tennessee's on a bye this week. So the AP poll tends to have a little bit of recency bias. What have you done for me lately? LSU with a high quality win against a high ranked team is going to move up one against Tennessee, but not enough to pass Miami. Texas A&M would drop down 7 spots to the number 21 ranked spot. Seems about reasonable for me. I believe that one right there. Another one that we wanted to play around with was what would happen is, actually confirm that, we're going to reset. What happens if Vanderbilt stays hot and beats this Texas team, right? Let's go ahead and play around with that scenario. So I think that would be probably a 28 to 27 game maybe. Say Vandy goes for 2, makes it fun at the very end. Let's run that simulation. Where does Texas end up? So in this scenario, we have a lot of movement now. You see a lot of arrows. Texas would drop down to 9, Vanderbilt up to 15. And I wouldn't be surprised if Vanderbilt would even jump Boise State and Notre Dame, because Vandy's losses this year, even though they had one bad loss, they would definitely be in contention for a top 12 spot right there. They would have significant wins under their belt at that point in time. So that's one of the biggest scenarios that we're seeing right there. We've gone over the BYU scenario, the LSU scenario, the Vandy scenario. There's a couple of different really, really good matchups that are happening this week, and a lot can really go down. Oregon and Illinois play each other. I don't really see anything happening too crazy in that game. That's a long trip for Illinois. Oregon has looked like a top dog the entire year, actually, besides the first 2 weeks where they really struggled. But we also have a bunch of other simulations that we can look at. So, for example, if we look at, we ran 10,000 simulations using the same AP algorithm that we've been using for what you've seen in the website. Now we take 10,000 simulations of random scores of historical college football games. We apply those to 10,000 simulations of week 9, and here are the percentage of times that each of those teams ended up at a specific ranking. So right here we see that Oregon was ranked number 1 91% of the time in all of those simulations. So right now it's looking like Oregon is a for sure number 1, Georgia for sure number 2, Penn State and Ohio State share a little bit for number 3, but it mostly looks like Penn State. Ohio State's looking like number 4, with Miami and Texas giving it a little bit of a shot. And then number 5, we have Miami and Texas going back and forth. So there's a bunch of different scenarios that end up with a mixed match of 4, 5, and 6, right? If we look at 6, there's a good even distribution between Miami, Texas, Tennessee, and LSU. So there is a ton of movement when you start to look at about 5 all the way down to 12, right? If you look at people who have chances at 12, Ole Miss has 20 out of 10,000 simulations, so barely a chance, but there is one, right? It looks like Alabama at 12, BYU, Indiana, Notre Dame. Those were the same teams that you're seeing, but you have someone like Vanderbilt that's sneaking in, right? If they can pull off a big upset. Mizzou with just the right concoction of teams that are winning and losing, all those different types of things. Kansas State, Boise State, all of these teams are right on the edge of being ranked in the top 12, which has huge implications for that college football playoff this year. It should be another great weekend. I don't think we've had a dud in a couple of weeks. Every single week has had great matchups. This one should be no different. And there's not that much movement up top. And sometimes when we've had that, it's ended up in complete chaos across the board. So fingers crossed we get another one of those. And then we can use the college football rankings right now algorithm to try and figure out where exactly everything lies. Enjoy your Saturday. Have fun watching football. And we'll check back again at the end of the day on Saturday and see where everything is. Have a great one.